Getting your camera set up correctly is one of the most important things you can do for wildlife photography. With the modern mirrorless systems, with the autofocus and the animal eye detect, it's even more important to get that right for wildlife photography. If you don't have those settings set up correctly, the camera is just hard to use, extremely confusing, and sometimes just downright irritable. Over the last 3 months, I've been using this Canon R7 as my main photography camera. And in that time, I found a setup that I really love that I've been using for the last 2 months, where everything's at just the touch of my fingertips. I don't have to fumble with any menus or any extra settings. What I've got set up is all I need. So that's what we're going to do today. I'm going to walk you through the menu settings of this camera and then show you how I have the button set up for how I use it in the field every day. But first, let's head back to the house because it's about 30 degrees out here and you can see there's snow everywhere. And let's go do that. Let's head back to the house and get warmed up, and I'll show you how to got this camera set up and see if it works for you. I'll see you back at the house. All right, I am back at the house and I've got a little warmed up and I'm back here in the studio. And what we're gonna do, we're gonna go through this camera real fast. I'll show you all the settings that I have set in this camera that are working for me. I'll show you the settings I change. If I don't change a setting, it's left at default. Remember that. After that, I'll show you how the buttons work after that, but right now we're going to go through the menus. All right, make sure you're in manual mode. And the reason that is the menu items I'll show you, some of these things will only show up if you're in manual mode. And I suggest you shoot manual mode because it's pretty simple. All right, first thing you're going to do is we're going to hit the menu button and we're going to reset this camera back to default. And why are we doing that? Reset in case you have your camera already set up or whatever set up at the factory. We're going to make sure it's back to square one. And we're going to go to the yellow wrench icon menu. We're going to tab 6. We're going to hit reset camera. We're going to hit basic settings, select that. We're going to go over to OK. We're going to hit OK. We're going to go back into the menu again, going back to the wrench icon again. Going back to tab 6 again, we're going to hit reset camera again. We're going to other settings and we're going to zero each of these out. We're going to customize quick control. We're going to say OK. Shoot at info display. Everything in here is going to hit it and hit OK. Custom shooting modes. We're going to wipe each one of these out. This is kind of a pain because you got to do each one of them. You don't have to do this, but I'd suggest you do this. I don't do copyright. Customized controls, we're going to clear that. Custom functions, we're going to clear those too. And that's it. Not doing the copyright information or the My menu. And the reason we're doing this is just so we can get the camera back to a known state like it was out of the factory. Now we're going to go to the red menu, tab 1, and that's where we're going to start. We're going to image quality, so let's select image quality. I shoot RAW, I do not shoot JPEG. I shoot RAW or C-RAW. Mostly I shoot RAW. The reason I do that is so I would be able to have full control, have all the dynamic range and all the colors that are available to that image. And if you do it in JPEG, you don't get the full information in that picture. And it's dumbed down, so you can't do as much editing. So we're going to shoot RAW. So you're going to use the roll on top, the scroll wheel, to change it over to RAW. Then you're going to use the joystick pad, the dial, to push it back to negative. So that now will be shooting RAW and no JPEG. That's the way I shoot. You can shoot however you want in here, but this is the way I shoot. Hit OK. Nothing else I change in here. The next thing we're going to change is all the way over in tab 7. And here we're going to do our drive mode. So the first thing I'm going to select is my drive mode, and I'm going to put it in H+ for me. Choose H or H+. That's 15 frames or 30 frames a second. I'm going to set this up for 30. I'll show you a way later where you can real quickly jump between 15 and 30 if you want. We're going down to shutter mode. I shoot electronic. You can choose mechanical. If you do that, you're going to be at 15 frames a second as fast as you can go. I haven't had a problem really. There is rolling shutter, but I can overcome that. If I shoot several images of the same thing, I'll have a few frames in there that'll be good and only a couple frames that are bad. All right, electronic. Next I'm going to change is going to release shutter without card. I'm going to turn this to disable. And the reason that is If you don't have a card in the camera, you try to hit the picture, or it won't let you change menus if it says, hey, I don't have a card. The reason that is so you don't forget your card in the camera, because there's been times where I've started to walk off, I turn my camera on, it says no, card in the camera. I know to go change it. All right, next thing we're going to go to is we're going to tab 8. And we're going to go down to image review and review duration. So the reason I turn this off is I don't want it to take a couple pictures and I let off the shutter and it tries to show me the picture for 2 or 5 seconds. I don't want that because the action could be hot and heavy. So I wanted to keep taking the pictures and I will review the pictures later, all right? Because what I see in the viewfinder is what I'm capturing in the card, so I don't need to see it like with the DSLR days. I had to take the picture and look and make sure I had it right. So we're going to click review duration. Move this down to off. Hit menu to get out of there. And that is it for that menu. Now we're going to the purple menu, which is the AF, the autofocus one. Very first thing we're going to change is the AF operation. We're going to change that to servo. That way it's continually focusing. Next thing is AF area. I'm setting this to single point spot AF because the 2 things I want is I want animal eye detect, full screen, and single point. That's the only 2 things I want. So I'm going to set that to single point. We're going to subject tracking. We're going to turn that off. All right. Subject detect. We're going to change that to animals. Eye detection, that switch subject 1. That's where I keep it. That is all I changed there. On tab 2, I leave it to auto. You can set it to 2 or 4 if you want, but that's where I have it set. Next thing I set is in the yellow menu. And I go to tab 3. I'm going to change the volume first. So this is for the shutter volume, what I hear when I hit the shutter button, because I'm in electronic, right? Hit shutter button, and you're going to change that to 1. And that's where I set it 1. 1 is loud enough for me where I can hear it, but almost nobody else can hear it. And that's what I want. And animals don't hear it. Well, they could, but that'd be really close. All right, we're going to get out of there. We're going down to power savings. Hit that. We're going to screen dimmer. And I set that to disable. I do not want my screen to disable or to dim. What it'll do is the LCD or the viewfinder, especially the LCD, after 2 or 5 seconds where that timer is, it will dim the screen. And I don't like that. I like to just keep it bright the whole time. Get out of that menu. Now I'm going to tab 4. And we're going to the very first option here, which is screen viewfinder display. I'm going to select that. And I'm going to set that to auto 2. What that does is if I put my eye close to the viewfinder, it goes to the viewfinder. If I take my eye away from the viewfinder, it goes to the LCD. It's going to auto switch for you. I'm going to viewfinder brightness. Instead of auto, we're going to set this to manual, and I'm going to set it to max, to 5. The reason is I want this viewfinder as bright as I can get it, because that's how you can really see. It's like turn the brightness up on your TV. If not, it's kind of dim to me. Hit OK to set it, and we're out of there. Next, we're going to the orange menu, which is the custom function menu, and we're going to tab 3. We're going down to customize buttons. Very first button we're going to change is our shutter button. We want to disable that from the autofocus start. We don't want it to focus, we just want it to meter. Hit OK. We're going down to the AF on button on the back of the camera. That's going to be our animal eye detect. So let's select that. And you're going to maneuver over to the IAF button over here. Eye detection AF. We're going to set that one. We're going down to the star button on the back of the camera. We're going to set that one to our single point. So what we want on here is metering and AF start. That's what we're going to set that button to. Hit OK. Now you can come up here to the top if you want to, the MFN button. We can set that one to start stop tracking for auto tracking. This way, if you do want to turn on the auto tracking, you can. I've used it once or twice and I just didn't find it very useful. Maybe when the ducks come back out and I got multiple, I'll find a use for it, but right now I haven't. I just usually use single point and get close and hit I. I'm good. All right, hit menu to get out of there. So we're going down to customize dials. I'm gonna hit this. The very first one, we're gonna leave it where it is. That's TV, that's our shutter. And that's the top dial that rolls. And we're going down to the dial that's around the joystick here on the back. We're going to set that one to ISO. Hit select, or set, sorry. Then I'm going down here to the very last one, and that's the control ring on the, if you have an RF lens. I'm going to set that one to AV. So scroll up and then over to AV. That's going to be my aperture if I have one. And I'll show you a way to change the aperture another way also, the way I do it in the field if I don't have an RF lens. All right, let's get out of that with the menu. So that is all the stills settings. So if all you care about stills, then jump to the end and see that. But if you want to watch the video will be really quick too. All right, so to do this, what we're going to do is we're going to change this dial on top to the movie. You got off, on, then movie. Set it to movie. The reason we do that is we only get certain items in that we don't get in the rest of the menus. So now we're going to hit menu, and we're going back to the red one again, which is the photo menu. We're going to tab 1. All right, tab 1. What I do here on this one is this movie icon is where I set my high speed, okay? And I'll show you why. So I set high speed here so I can record my animals 120 frames a second to get that real smooth, buttery, slow motion, walking, moving, whatever they're doing. So to do that, you're going to go to set high frame rate. You're going to set that to on, enabled, excuse me. So let's enable it. Then we go back up, and by default, it's set how we want. It's 1080p, which is FHD, 120 and IPB full, not IPB light. If you don't want that, you could just go back, leave it enabled, and set it to whatever frame you want, but I set it to 120 frames a second. So next we're going to tab 3, and what I do is I leave this to auto white balance. Then I scroll down to Canon log settings, and I turn Canon log on. Only turn this on if you want to color grade. If you don't want to color grade, leave it to auto or off. And what that does is that's going to use Canon colors in the camera. You don't have to color grade it, which is good for a lot of people. And a lot of times I've been doing that lately. But I'm getting back into color grading, so I'm going back to C-Log 3. Next, we're going to tab 6, and we're going onto shutter button function for movies. That means what happens when you hit the shutter button. Select that. We're going down to fully press. You hit fully press, you're going to start stop movie function. So what that means is if you half press it, it's going to meter. If you full press it, it's going to start doing the movie, or you can hit the record button on top, the red dot. Either one of them will work. Let's get out of that menu. Now we're going to the purple menu, the autofocus menu. We're going to move section 1. Everything in here, except for subject detect, I leave as is. Set subject detect to animals. Everything else leave as default. And that is it for the movie function. That's all you have to do. Now, let's go back for one more thing for the movie. We're going to go back to the stills, set it to on. Now we're in the stills area. So now what happens if we hit the red button up top? We're going to set that right now. Hit menu. We're going over to the red menu. We're going to red menu 10. We're going to set that to hit movie recording size. We're going to go to 4K. I set mine to 24 frames a second and IPB. And that's how I have it set. So now if I hit the red button up top, it's going to start recording in 20 frames seconds if I'm in stills and hit that auto record. That's what it's going to do. So that is it, guys. This camera is now set up how I have it set for stills and for video. Now that we have all the camera settings set up, let's show you how I use this camera in the field. First thing you do is turn the camera on. So once you turn the camera on, I hit the info button and I go until I get to this screen here, which shows you all my information on the back of the screen. What you'll see here is where it says my shutter. You can see it's got the half dial. That means this button here. You can see the aperture button is the dial up on the control ring. And you'll see where it says my ISO. That is where my joystick is with the circle there. That's how I change it. If I want to change from 30 frames a second to 15, all I do is hit the Q button down here, hit that, and you'll navigate down where it says H+, hit it, change it to that one, H, which is 15, done. If I need to change it back, I hit the Q again, move it over H+, I'm in 30 frames a second. That's how quick I can do it, right? Now when I'm in the field, and I'm in manual mode the whole time, remember, this is my shutter, so what I do is I set my shutter speed where I need to set it. So I can roll this around to whatever speed I want to set it to. I'm just going to use 250 in here. For birds, I may need to set it to 1600 for duck flying off, so I'd set that. To set my aperture, I would just do the control ring or hit the Q button and touch the back. Just change my aperture to the aperture I want, and I leave it for that time when I'm shooting. I don't need to be moving my shutter. I don't need to be moving my aperture because I've set it for what I'm expecting that bird to do. If I do need to change it real fast, I can just roll it real quickly on top to change it. Just that simple. From there, all I do is I just use my ISO to set my exposure to whatever I need to set it to, because I've already locked in my other two things and I use my shutter. But if I do need to move the other two, I can do it on the fly just real quickly. And then, as you will see in this, say the LCD simulates what you see in the viewfinder. What you do is you just hit info button until you finally see the histogram like you see top right on here on the camera. After you've got that, all you gotta do is roll your ISO until you can see your exposure and your histogram move where you want to see it move to. Once you've got your histogram and your exposure where you think you want it, then you can take your picture, because what you see in the back of the camera through the LCD is what you're going to get in the image. That's it for setting that part. So to use the focus buttons, on the back, the AF on button, if you want to use the eye detect on anything that's within the frame, you hit AF on. And to get it to lock onto the body, the head, or the eye. Now remember, the camera needs to have light or contrast to see where the eye is. If it's too dark, it can't see the contrast between the eye and the head and the body. So for times you've got your exposure set and it still doesn't lock, go ahead and just roll your ISO up a little bit, get the lock, roll your ISO back, and it'll stay locked. If you need to hit a single point to either hit the animal or hit a branch or pre-focus to a spot, just hit the star button and it will lock on to that spot. That's it. It's that simple. And that's how I have this camera set up with all the buttons on this thing. Very, very simple. Shutter, ISO, aperture, the two focus buttons. Change my frame rate, pretty simple. If you want to see a more detailed description of how to use the autofocus, go watch this video over here. See you in the next episode.